Welcome to the Comedy Den podcast, your backstage pass to the business of funny. I'm Jared Monroe. Today we have my friend, comedian Derrick Stroup, a Southern powerhouse comic whose booming voice and clean, high-energy comedy style has taken him from Denver's comedy scene to the New York's Comedy Cellar and even into arenas alongside Nate Bargatze. In this episode, Derrick shares how he went from running bars in small-town Alabama to headlining across the entire country, why yelling has become his comedic superpower, the viral crockpot bit that fans can't stop talking about and quoting to today, and what life looks like now as a brand new dad. Here we go. Here we are with Derrick Stroup, comedian extraordinaire. Derrick, we didn't talk about this, and I do want to double check that we're okay, since I did bring quite the smackdown on you in fantasy football last week. We haven't talked about it.
Yeah, well, as a veteran in fantasy football, I know that not every week is going to be a nightmare for me like that one. When I saw Xavier Worthy get knocked out by his own player, I got to be honest, I felt that it was going to be a long weekend for me. But I wouldn't have after, I really was feeling sorry for myself all the way until Allen went nuts. And then I go, no, I wouldn't have beat him regardless. But I'm gonna tell you, going into that game, there was a lot of woe is me going on. I was like, man, none of my players, because I have full faith. I actually almost reached out to you and was like, I wish we could do fantasy football press conferences because mine would have been like, this isn't my team. They didn't show up, and we will not have another game like this year. But Josh Allen poured it on at the end.
He
It
dumped
was
it.
fun.
It was an
Yeah, that
avalanche.
was
It was.
but you know what? It was so fun to watch. And what's crazy is I screenshotted our score a couple times because I was anticipating before Josh lost his mind. I go, I'm going to break Jared's heart with the craziest. I almost texted you when Josh Allen ran it in. I could hear you yell from here, Jared. That he did a play action fake and ran it in like
Yep.
the third quarter. And before that, I go, he's in trouble. And then it all went the other way. But yeah, it was fun.
That was one of the most incredible, just regular season games I think I've ever watched. The Bills Ravens game. That was epic.
Yes.
It was so good. I kind of forgot I was absolutely crushing a fantasy along the way. It was so good as a real life game. You kind of forgot about it.
It was it truly was. And the only reason that I was hanging in there for 4 minutes of that game is Zay Flowers went bonkers himself. But
He
yeah,
did.
it was a fun game.
It was scary. Well, I want to talk to you obviously about comedy, but I think I would love to go back. Some of our viewers, all three of them, might know some of this, but I don't know a lot about your origins in comedy. Like, when did you start doing comedy? How long does that go back? When did it all begin? Did you always know you're freaking hilarious?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of comedians you find that out at a young age. I've always been a little bit of a rascal. I was my heroes as a kid, Chris Farley, Jim Carrey. I was doing their impressions at a very young age. A lot of impressions, a lot of act outs, a lot of that sort of thing. But when you grow up, in Harvest, Alabama, I never dreamed of being on stage. I was just, back then you were a problem child, more than funny. You were, somebody who was a troublemaker. But yeah,
Yep.
I kind of knew pretty young, but I got started in the wildest way ever. I was actually running a bar in Jacksonville, Alabama, and I
I
decided
didn't
to
know there
just
was
put
such a
my
place.
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of people, when we beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss in 2010, they all thought we were from Florida, and they quickly learned that it's Jacksonville, Alabama. Huge upset. Division I AA school beat an SEC team at their place. I was there, but anyways, Jacksonville State and Jacksonville, Alabama, town of like 5,000, 6,000 people. But the craziest thing, without making it too long-winded, it's pretty crazy. I'm running these two bars, Pelham's and Brothers, the only two joints in in town, and they're really pretty low key country type honky tonk places. And these same guys that own these bars own Smith's Old Bar and Fox Brothers in Atlanta. They're part owners of both of them. So if you wanted to
Okay.
play Smith's Old Bar, you had to come through our little rinky dink bar in Jacksonville first. It was like the entry room. So it was crazy. I was inspired early on, mid 20s running this place. Riley Green started in the bar that I ran. We were kind of college rivals, if you will. But we get along now, but me and Riley Green go way back. And then Sam Hunt and Chase Rice and all these other guys. I mean, I was in there at Brothers Bar with Sam Hunt, and there were 7 people. And then the next day, we went and bought a goat at the local fair. It was a wild time. But I saw these guys, and I was inspired pretty young that they were. And Riley Green was getting all this attention. I was pretty jealous, and I was like, if I hear wagon wheel one more time, I'm gonna kill myself. So I just started putting myself up on stage about once every 3 or 4 months. I would go up on stage and I would do like 45 minutes, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Just 45
I
minutes?
yeah, yeah. Never met another comedian. Never been to a mic. It wasn't any good. Don't let me lie to you. But it was fun, because my buddies. I was a storyteller. I was really animated. I've always kind of been this emotional firecracker, and so I just did it for my friends. I did it for a little bit of attention. I did it because I was, I'd always enjoyed stand up on television. It was far from a dream. It was more of just a hobby at the time, and then eventually in 2015, I moved to Denver. This is the first time I'd ever been to an open mic or met other comedians. And then the rest is kind of history. But I started off in a wild way. No mics, no like chatting it up with the community of comedians. I was just getting up there and kind of mimicking what I felt like I'd seen Bill Burr and a few other guys do on TV. So yeah,
I feel like it's pretty common actually that the comics who come from who are born out of completely non-traditional comedy cities, like they kind of
yeah,
go to the cities, right? But I
yeah,
think it seems like a lot of them have like these backgrounds in rural states or I mean, how many have come from Canada? You talk about Jim Carrey and all these other people who come
yeah,
from those backgrounds. But Denver, tell me about Denver because Denver has some great clubs, but it's not
yeah.
necessarily associated with being like a traditional like you go there for comedy kind of. Especially probably when you went there. When did you go?
2015. And
Okay.
yeah, and I actually caught this episode of Flophouse. It was like this random episode, and they were filming the Denver comedy scene, and it was Sam Talent and Aaron Urist and Nathan Lund and a few other people, and they looked like they were having a good time. And I was just glad to see that there was a comedy scene there, coming from where I was coming, and people are going to go. I lived in Huntsville for about 4 or 5 months before I moved to Denver, moved back to
Yeah.
Huntsville from Jacksonville, Alabama, and there was a comedy scene there, but not much of one. And so, yeah, I didn't really. I got lucky. I didn't know how good Denver was going to be. Comedy Works, unbelievable scene. That's my home
Mhm.
club, one of the best clubs in the country. Unreal. And then the local scene is just killer. You got the Grawlix there, which is Adam Caton Holland, Ben Roy, Orvidal. Those were guys that I looked up to. John Novosad, and so the Denver scene was great. The biggest obstacle I had was just being so different than all those people. And I didn't shy away from it. One thing I'm proud of is I've done Southern comedy everywhere I go. I don't go to rooms in the Northwest or in the heart of New York City or anywhere else and
Yeah.
hide from it. I lean into it. And I did that in Denver, and it was hard at first because that's a great city, but that's not a city where they're necessarily looking for my accent. And so, but it made me a better writer, Jared. It made me a smarter writer. You can't get away with low hanging fruit and punching down in a city like Denver. It's a progressive, smart city, and they were
Mhm.
definitely holding my feet to the fire. Being from Alabama, they were, projecting, having some assumptions, and so I had to write really smart. I had to, write some stuff that I could get them to wrap their head around. That because I wasn't super relatable to all those folks. So moving to Denver strengthened me, made me a lot better comedian. And the 10 years I was there, man, I mean, I couldn't find a good meal if I tried, but I did enjoy it. Yeah,
Yeah, your comedy is interesting in that it does play different. I mean, you come to you're doing your special, recording your special
yeah,
next month in
yeah,
Birmingham, Alabama, and I imagine that crowd is going to be just on board with you, right? Because they understand your point of view,
yeah.
they understand your perspective, and they understand. And then you have this fish out of water thing that you take to Denver, and now you're at based out of New York City, which is probably more similar to Denver than obviously down here in the South, but talk about that. I'm kind of curious, like, how does that comedy transition play? How does the audience react? You say you don't play, you don't switch up your material play to the north, but do you find that the audience reacting to the fish out of the water kind of category of comedy, this is strange and different to them, this world of grits and biscuits
Yeah.
versus how it plays here to the home crowd?
Yeah, and I probably don't say this enough. Don't give myself probably enough credit in the fact of how I finesse it a little bit. When I'm in Denver, I'm kind of going after them. And I'm self-deprecating a little bit, but in a smart, kind of fast way, letting them know more of like I'm paying attention. I know what you think. I know the stereotypes. I know what you're assuming, and then I kind of wrap
Mhm.
that into some jokes, making fun of themselves. So I'm making fun of me. I'm making fun of the hipsters. I mean, I have an hour on hipsters. That's half the reason I moved from
Yeah.
Denver is I didn't want to write another beanie joke for the rest of my life. But that's the way. And then when I go to New York City, I'm playing some defense. I'm acting like I'm on my heels. None of the room likes me. And I take a different
Yeah.
angle. One of my favorite things, and it happens, John Christ, a guy I've been out with a whole lot, done a lot of great for my career. He's seen it a couple times. It's a backhanded compliment that people don't necessarily, but I'll be in front of a crowd in the South, and I'll get them rolling, man. And they'll go, man. I bet it's so fun when you do comedy in front of your people. I bet it's so fun when you gotta, and it's like, it's hard not to sound obnoxious, but I go, my comedy travels, Bubba. My comedy's funny everywhere.
Yeah.
I get rooms in New York City rolling the same way I get them going in Mississippi. I play the room a little different. I come from a little bit different angles, but I'm not changing the identity of me or my set. But it just when you're in New York, I act like everybody. Right now, talk a lot about on stage about my accent because that's the world I live in. That's the reactions I get. As soon as I start talking in New York City, people have things to say. They have different reactions. I've had people get up, sitting at the common, like the coffee bar. I have spoke out loud and saw several times, no joke. People get up from the table and leave. Alyssa's been with me, and I'm like, it's hard not to say that my accent, right after I talk for a minute out loud to the barista, they pack up an entire station and leave. And so those type of things, I'll play on those a good bit, but I'd like to give myself a little bit of credit. In real life and on stage, I'm a little smarter than people read me, and so that's kind of how I play it in both places. But I'd always kind of get in my feelings about how Denver showed me some love, but the city never embraced me kind of how I wanted it to. And I think it's in hindsight, I was actually because I was making fun of them the entire time I was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it definitely, and I love using those muscles. I do comedy coast to coast. I don't just hide out in the South and stay in my market. I want to go. I
Yeah.
want to go to San Francisco. I want to go to other places because that's why I moved to New York City. It's because when I was in Denver, I felt like I was killing, but nobody was paying attention. It felt like you ever had a dream where you punch somebody in your dream and it's like punching rubber. Like there was
Yeah.
no contact. Like no matter how hard I go, I'm punching as hard as I can, and there's no con. So I moved to New York City to kind of prove to people that I can be funny anywhere. These aren't just hipster jokes.
Yeah.
These aren't just Southern jokes. I can be in Manhattan and ride lightning.
I feel like that's not super common. I can't think of a ton of Southern comics who are up there taking those hits in those audiences and taking their risks. Because I think a lot of people do feel like the Southern thing is for the South, and that's kind of like we've worked with comics even over the years who were very like they kind of didn't even try to get outside of that because they like, hey, I can make a really good living right here. I don't have to go
Yeah.
anywhere else. I can just do the
Hmm.
theaters. I can do the same circuit. I can drive it every year, and it's a risk that a lot of them they felt that rejection from the north and from the late shows and all that kind of stuff for all those years.
Yeah.
They didn't really try to cut their teeth up there because they didn't feel like maybe it was worth the comedy risk or worth the business headache to do that.
Yeah. 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 It's probably a few things. I'll say some of them are probably a little bit scared too. I mean, New York City is not an easy place to come in as a
No.
Southern comic. You got to have some chops. I mean, I lean on my Southern stuff, but I also have an anger and a rant and an edge that plays very well in these type of rooms that not everybody has. If you don't like necessarily my Southern point of view, you might like how quick I am, and how edgy I am.
Yeah.
And when I say edgy as a clean comedian, I mean just complaining, and ranting, most of the time. But yeah, it's not easy. But I coming up in Denver, I knew that I didn't want to just be just regional. I wanted my comedy to travel because there are country folks in every corner of every place I've ever been. They're everywhere and they show up. Some of them talk different than others, and some of them yada yada. But country folks are countrywide, which is nice. I'm trying to touch them all.
Yeah, you bring up being a clean comedian, and one thing that I found just absurd about your comedy when I first saw it, because I had seen clips people told me about you about a year or so ago, year or two ago, and I loved when I saw your clips, but I got it when I saw you live for the first time
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Atlanta, and I was like,
yeah,
"This is a different animal. This is a different breed." And one thing I found so fascinating is, and if you're watching this, you haven't seen Derrick perform. Like, yeah, I mean, literally, your Instagram handle is Derrick Yells,
yeah,
and it's loud, it's full of energy. There's like this anger that comes out. That's
yeah,
just
for
the most
sure.
relatable thing in the world to me. And when I heard you do that clean, I thought I don't think enough people appreciate that rage, that level of energy, that volume, screaming about whatever it is, that ticked you off that day, a stain on your shirt.
Hmm.
To do that clean, I think is really underappreciated.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And my favorite compliment is when people go, "Man, I didn't even know you were clean. I didn't
Yeah,
have any idea."
it can go right past you sometimes because it's so full of energy and rage. And I think it'd be so easy for most comics to like just dropping,
Yeah,
language throughout that. But you do it clean, and that's
absolutely.
really hard.
Yeah, and
It's
it
got to
took
be. I
some.
imagine it's hard.
Yeah, and it's taken some training. I mean, I didn't start off as clean as I am now, and I got around the right people, Nate and John, and
Mhm.
those guys, and they were just like, "Man, your comedy is clean. You're just saying words that aren't necessary." And once I figured that out, but it is tough when you're ranting and you're talking. But I try, and I'm not the best at it, but to just keep my mouth clean in my daily life, and it seems to translate a little bit better. But growing up where I did, I always had a switch, depending on household to household. Growing up in North Alabama, some households you went into, the word crap would get your butt beat.
Yeah.
And other ones, it wouldn't matter at all. So for some reason, I've always had this thing in my head. I mean, I have, knock on wood, done. Uh, every city in America with John Christ opening and being squeaky clean for his crowds, and I've never slipped up in any rant or anything like that. And it's a switch that growing up as a Southern kid and bouncing from household to household, you just had to watch your mouth. You had to have that automatic filter. And it's my favorite way to do comedy. Everybody can enjoy it. Nobody has to move their kids out of the living room when I'm yelling
Yeah.
on a reel. But yeah, and what's fun, and you learn this, and everybody in my life, when I first started comedy, everybody thought I yelled because I couldn't write or yada yada, or I am a very
Mm-mm.
emotional person. It is who I am. It is, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be an offensive line coach, just losing my mind on the sideline. And so that's one thing that I just want people to know. This, when I get on stage and I do that, I don't think when I get up there, "Now, Derek, let's really lose our mind tonight and give them a good show." I'm already mad about something that doesn't have to do with the show before I get on stage because it's the world I live in. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate,
Yeah.
but it's the world that I live in, and I feel blessed, Jared. My whole life, I've been too much for every person. And then I found comedy, and comedy goes, "We're going to pay you a decent amount of money to be this person in front of the
Yeah.
world." And so I can't tell you what type of outlet and release and relief it is to know that this part of me that is sometimes a lot for people plays so well on a microphone.
You mentioned touring around with Nate, and I know you've gotten to go with him to these. I mean, these massive arenas all over the country, and just being around him, and obviously his incredible success and his story. How has being around Nate Bargatze played a role in not only your comedy, maybe dialing in your voice the way it is now, but just from a business perspective in the industry? How has that relationship changed that course?
I mean, Nate's completely changed my career. I mean, I have to say, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but just the internet's made me sensitive to it. I definitely, our voices are similar because I think we grew up 90 miles from each other. But my least
Yeah.
favorite thing in the world are the internet comments. They go, "This guy is ripping off Nate's entire
Oh
act,"
no,
while I'm losing my mind. I mean, losing
not
my
even
mind.
close.
It's not even close. And I mean, I'm sure you guys see it. It's up there with the top comments constantly, and it's always from somebody that doesn't know of many Southern accents. So they hear my accent, they hear Nate's accent, and they
Yeah.
go, "Well, we got a copycat." And that ignorance makes me want to drive off a cliff. But
Yeah.
he has inspired me in so many ways. I haven't known Nate for very long. A lot of people, I think, assume things. I met Nate for the first time in person. Well, and actually met him beginning of 2024. I went out
Okay.
with him in Washington, D.C. I did a last second date that I picked up with him, went out on the road with him, and he enjoyed my comedy, but we also hit it off. Me and Nate are. Very similar and totally different. We kind of think alike in some ways. We like the same things. We kind of we're similar, but our emotional side is completely different. He's very even keel, level headed, like approaches things differently than I do. But what I found is the confidence that he gave me was interesting because how he talks about how he's dumb and all these other things and how he looks at the world and about books. I have felt that way my whole life. And I've felt like, well, I'm dumb. I'm dumb. And then you meet somebody like Nate and you're like, oh, no, we're not dumb. I mean, I guess we are to some people in some ways, but we're really smart in these other ways. So I
Hmm.
was inspired in a unique way in that regard because I found out we were so alike and how our brains worked. But like I said, so different. And plus, I mean, his career and just what he's doing is inspiring. I don't dream of arenas. I'd like to think I'm not delusional. That's a one percenter thing. If that happened in my
Yeah.
life, what a blessing. But I don't go to bed thinking about that. But it's something that Nate has taught me. He said it to me and he lives it. Is about being prepared. You know, every once in a while you'll catch Nate on a rant, and more than every once in a while, he'll rant more than you think he would. He just doesn't yell when he talks about it. But one day he was talking about nobody's prepared. Comedians aren't prepared. They go up on stage and they're not prepared for that night. They're not prepared with their jokes, and it resonated with me, and it stuck with me because I had felt unprepared a few times. I know that I write some really great stuff, and I've got the energy, but the preparation and the joke writing and all of
Yeah.
that makes all the difference. And he just helps his people so much. I've never seen a comedian that helped fellow comedians more than Nate Bargatze
Absolutely.
does. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it. But yeah, he's been a big in 2 years that I've known him, a big inspiration. I didn't know his comedy. Let me tell you something. Let me tell y'all. Nate would not love how late I ran into him. Okay. I didn't find Nate in 2018. I found him a little later on the internet, and I loved his stuff
Yeah.
immediately. But yeah, Nate's a big part of my career.
It is interesting how, like, just to go back to a little bit, like the copycat thing that people throw out there. We've seen it with other comics too, like Leanne Morgan, like any other female comic with a Southern accent, and it's
Hmm.
it immediately you must be ripping off Leanne Morgan. And it is interesting, like this Southern thing, Southern and clean, to call it the combination, the one-two punch of the two that's kind of taken over the country the last couple of years is like it's like a whole new introduction to the world of like what Southern people are even like, how they
Yeah.
think or feel about things. Have you seen that in your career? Like, have you felt
Oh,
that
yeah.
wave of that Southern clean comedy wave that's kind of happening? It's like it feels brand new to everybody. Whereas I feel like the heyday of clean comedy before that, you kind of had to go back to like the Seinfeld era, and obviously
Yeah.
Brian Regan, Gaffigan, those kind of guys made it really popular and have always kind of continued it. But like, there seems like this new wave of clean comedy and Southern comics in particular that's so new to everybody out there watching these clips on the internet that it's their only point of reference at this point is Nate is clean and Southern, Leanne Morgan clean and Southern, and so everybody kind
Yeah.
of feels like that. They don't realize that they've just been missing out on a whole world of comedy in the country, maybe that they haven't been exposed to before.
Yeah, it's definitely taken over. And I think it's because, there's a lot of peaks and valleys in comedy if you look at the history of it. And us comedians that really are in this, We know that. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. Right now, we've been on a
Mhm.
rocket ship. I don't know when it's going to go down. We can hope it's in a few years, but it does have peaks and valleys, like a lot of other things does. But the clean comedy, I think, is just a breath of fresh air for how blue
Yeah.
things got for a while. We went on a 15-year run where, I mean, I'm a big fan of Bill Burr, but it was people saying shock comedy, saying,
Yeah.
and then I think people kind of wanted a palate cleanser. And then when they did that, they found a whole world of these comedians that they had never known about or heard about. And I think the perspective of Southern clean comedians is relatable nationwide. And also, we're pretty fascinating to people for whatever reason. I mean, I talk about on stage in a new bit I'm doing right now. One of the lines that kind of goes into it is I go, Southerners, we visit New York. New Yorkers do not visit us. So when we run into New Yorkers, we know all about them. We've been watching them, paying attention to them. When a New Yorker runs into a Southerner, I mean, they freak out. It's like they've caught a Pokemon. I
Yeah.
mean, they can't believe that there's one out here in the wild that they just ran into. And there's some fascination in that. And then I think once you dig into it, the layers, you go, oh, well, there's common ground in that. We're a lot more alike. I live in, this person lives in Albany, New York. They're listening to Leanne and they go, oh, my family's the same way, except I just don't
Yeah.
sound like a bowl of gravy. And so, yeah, it's definitely a huge wave. And I wear that badge with pride. I show up and, I mean, being clean and being Southern, it's something that I'm proud of because, I can hang with anybody. If Austin ever called me down there to do a show, Austin, Texas, I would do a clean show and I would burn that building to the ground.
Yep.
And because this stuff works, it works anywhere. It travels. But yeah, there's a big wave for sure.
You mentioned Bill Burr earlier, and I think in a previous podcast somewhere you had talked about your voice kind of like being a little bit influenced by Burr and
Yeah,
with a touch of Sam Kinison. Can you talk
absolutely.
about that? Because where did that evolution of that part of your voice come from? Because I'm really curious. Like, did you the yelling, the volume, the energy? Did you draw from certain particular people or influences in or outside of comedy for that, or did that just kind of naturally evolve?
Well, it's kind of a natural thing. A little bit of it is I have a natural build that works on stage that I have in real life, where I start off right here in conversations and everything. I don't come out hot. You're not very rarely you're going to start talking to me and I'm ah, but you'll feel that build and it'll happen. And it's happened in this conversation where I go and it goes up and it goes up and it goes up. And I found to use that on stage and it really works. And then it took me a long time. My dry bar special, I didn't love it because I didn't have the peaks and valleys that I like to have in my set. I
Yeah.
was I was up here. My RPMs were up here, and after that set, I learned how to drop them and sit for a while and talk, and then rise it and then drop it. And I found out that the crowd appreciated that style, but also the breaks where it wasn't just a chainsaw the home time. But Bill Burr definitely influenced a good bit of my comedy. He was Robin Williams was the first special live on Broadway, 2006. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's a masterpiece. He was the first one that made me really made my antennas go up for comedy. Bill Burr, 2010. I go, oh, this is the type of comedy that I would do if I was ever going to do it because he's downhill. He's talking to these people like they're dumb. He's not doing a dance up there. I mean, God bless Jerry Seinfeld. He's great. But I never wanted to do that type of comedy. I wanted
Yeah.
to lean on the microphone and kind of be like, I don't know. I don't like you guys. I don't know. This is how I feel. And, that Bill Burr, Sam Kinison, I heard about him after I was yelling, looped around and found him. And I went, oh, man. And I would have been much more like Sam if my career would have started younger. If I would have started comedy 22, 23,
Yeah.
I would have screamed the whole time because my emotions, then my energy, it was at that level. I have that in me where I would have just screamed at the crowd like a crazy person. Um, but I'm glad that I was a little older when I got into it. But I can to wrap this up. I remember I was at a mic at Mutiny bookstore and coffee shop in Denver, and it was 2000 and I think 17. I was on stage and I was telling jokes, and none of them were landing. Jared, they were stiff arming me, and it bothered me because I knew these were good jokes. So I started yelling at the room. Tiny little bookstore, 10 people in there. I was, and I was really mad. I was mad in my heart. They didn't know that. They all start busting out laughing. Everybody starts laughing. I'm mad, man. I go, I'm mad. I'm not happy. All y'all, I go, you got baby powder in your hair. You're over there giggling. This isn't a joke. The guy's like spitting out his green tea. He couldn't believe. And then that's the night. I go, okay, okay. So they like that. They like that energy. And I
Yeah.
lost my cool. I lost my cool in real life, and it played different on stage. And so that's where it started.
Shifting gears a little bit, we can't talk to you without talking about crockpots. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's too good. We're doing content all about it now. I love it.
yeah,
We're doing content with you on social. I'm personally getting recipes now that I'm sending home
yeah,
to my wife saying, "Hey, we got to try this. The game is coming up on Sunday,
yeah.
and
That's
I got to
right.
try this one." So you seem to have a bit of a passion for cooking, or at least the crockpot genre of cooking. But did it ever cross your mind to like just go all in on? Were you ever drawn to being a chef?
Um, no, but I've looked up to chefs on TV and such, like people look up to sports figures. I mean, I've got
Yeah,
some people that I really, that I love to watch. And I've never watched people make recipes with anticipation of making them. I was always sitting there excited about what if I could eat that. I'm a
yeah,
real foodie, through and through. I've loved food my whole life. It's a truly one of my biggest passions, and I do crock pots because it's easy. I'm not a detailed person at all in my life, unfortunately, besides in my storytelling. And so cooking can be tough, baking can be tough because I don't like to follow
yeah.
things. But crock pots, my mother taught me when I went to college. She was basically like, Derek, you get this crock pot and I give you a few recipes, you're not gonna die. And you're gonna figure this out. And she's like, and she knows I'm her son. She knows it was right in my she needed to give me something that her son could do. And crock pots, anybody can do. They're very easy. But my whole life, I've watched different chefs and different cooks, and I still do to this day. I mean, my favorite TV show, it's not even close. Besides sports, is Guy Fieri's show. Drive-ins,
Mhm.
divers, and dines, or whatever. However, I always say it wrong. But anyways, I could watch that show all day, every day. So yeah, I've always been obsessed with food, not necessarily cooking it, but tasting it. Everything I see on there, I want to put in my mouth. But the crockpot thing is really fun. You know what? You don't get to pick what jokes go viral in your life, and that's by far my number one joke I've
Yeah.
ever wrote. And it's so wild. I mean, so many people have brought it up to me at shows. I've had merch made for me. People send me constant pictures and stuff, and it's just I think crockpots are so relatable. They're in every kitchen in America, and I do have a real passion for them.
It's kind of a metaphor for life there somewhere in the crockpot thing of just letting it be what it's gonna be. Let it sit, let it
Yeah,
simmer, let
yeah, and
time
I
do its
love
work on
having.
something.
And Jared, sorry to interrupt you. There's no better feeling to me to be running errands, doing stuff, and then remember that there is food cooking at the same time.
Yeah.
So when I can't tell you how warm and fuzzy it makes me feel to know that this meal is happening while I'm doing other things. It still blows my mind. So yeah, man, big fan of crock pots, and that's what I live in Astoria, Queens. It's one of the best food places in the country. So, yeah, man, I do love it.
Well, you're gonna need the crockpots now. You're gonna need to multitask because I think the world now knows that you're a new dad. You got a baby
Yeah,
at home.
man. Yeah, I got a 2 week
Talk to
old.
me about that. I
Uh,
wanna hear.
Yeah, man, it's wild. It's so cool. I mean, 40 years old, had my first baby. Me and Alyssa, we're so excited. He's so adorable. I mean, it doesn't none of it seems real until he comes out. When he's in her belly
Yeah.
the whole time, it just feels like this whole you're just like, yeah, we're having a baby, sure. And then the baby shows up and you're like, oh, we're live. Yeah, and but it's been great. The first 2 weeks I'm
Yeah.
pretty useless. I try to take my shifts. I took a 6 a.m. shift on a feeding and putting him to sleep and that sort of thing. But yeah, I've learned to be helpful and look tired even if you're not. Um, because nothing's worse than coming in and looking like you're having an incredible afternoon, and Alyssa's in there just fighting for her life. She's had a baby. She's been breastfeeding for a
Oh
day and a
yeah,
half. Yeah.
it's wild. I have 3 and 1 on the way, and so it's that whole process
Wow.
that yeah, you are completely useless the first couple months there.
Yeah.
Is being a dad something you always wanted to do? Is that something that was on your mind growing up though?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's something that I've always wanted to do. I really hit the ground running with my career and hadn't thought about it a whole lot. And then me and Alyssa, we really decided that we wanted to do it, and we felt like, now was the time. And just so many people told me about how beautiful the experience is, and I just think, it's a healthy thing to do. You're married, start a family. I believe it's the right process. So, yeah, man, and I love my wife so much, and I love her even more. Than you grow so close, and it's such a beautiful
Yeah,
thing. You're such a team, and yeah, man, it's truly beautiful. All your friends try to tell you, and you get tired of the cliches, but they're all true. They're all real, and it's the best thing. There's nothing in
yeah,
comedy that I'll ever do that I've ever felt even close to as proud as I felt when I was holding Seth. I was like, oh man,
yeah.
there's nothing I've ever done that's compared. So yeah, what a beautiful thing.
It's completely different. It's completely different than anything else. And I mean, s- going back to comedy, and do you think like how do you picture? I guess at this point because your baby's only like what couple months old or a month old,
Mm,
something like that.
two
How
weeks.
do you
Yeah.
picture 2 weeks? Okay, wow, very fresher than I thought. So, have you thought about, like, the evolution of your comedy from here being a parent, how, like I mean, I'll sneak peek, spoiler, I mean, the material I would get from my kids if I was a comic every day is just rich. It is just it
Yeah.
was just a gold mine of comedy
Yeah.
material, but have you thought about how that might change your material as you go on? What do you think you'll start, like, doing more material about parenting and that kinda thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've already got a good chunk on how being a heavy set guy, I was, able to help her in her journey way more than I expected through pregnancy because I'd already been through everything she was going through. Which is a really fun bit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I really do. I write about things I can touch, see, feel. I'm not somebody who goes to coffee shops and comes up with something to be upset about. I think my comedy plays so genuine because I farm everything from the inside and then take it from there. I don't come up with things that I want to feel a certain way about. So it'll come to me for sure, especially as we go along. But yeah, I've already come up with some of that material. I was a little worried. Some people, they were like, Derek, you're going to lose your edge a little bit, having a kid. And I still wake up just as mad as I ever have. So that's a relief for my writing. But yeah, yeah, there'll definitely be some fun kid material.
The sleep deprivation alone, I'm sure will just add to the rage on stage
Yeah,
because it's a very
absolutely.
very real thing those early months. Um, uh,
It
there's a lot.
is.
You're on your own journey in comedy. You're going your own places right now. You're off to the races. You might not see yourself there as like where you ultimately want to be yet. We're still on the journey, but I mean, there's so many comics I know because I've talked to them about you, and they look up to you. I mean, you're a comics comic. People want to be, like you. What advice do you have to comics coming up? Maybe in your world or not in your world in terms of clean and southern, but what advice would you have for younger comics now to kind of get to those next steps and maybe thinking about your own journey or just what you've seen in the industry is like, man, you want to get I mean, you're touring with the top of the industry with Nate, you are selling out your own, rooms and theaters. Like what's the most important piece of advice you have found to be helpful for a young comic coming up today in today's comedy scene?
I mean, I'm not really a big advice guy in this thing because I didn't really, it's tough and there's so many different avenues, but there are a couple baseline things like I live on stage. I stay on stage, I work on stage, I get up on sets, and I don't share them all to social media. Every once in a while I'll share a random picture of me at the cellar. And I'm like, I bet you people think that I share every time I go to the cellar. And I do 15 sets, sometimes more a week at the cellar, and then at the New York Comedy Club, and then I go do a 5 show weekend at a club, and all that pays off. There's some comics that'll tell you, I mean, well, they won't tell you, but we were like kind of even a couple years ago. And I know that I passed them and I became better or honed my craft because I did it more than they did. This comedy works out for me because you do have to be smart and you do have to have these certain things, but this is a repetition game. And anything, like an orator, the more you speak, the better you get at it, the better your rhythm, your
Hmm.
timing, and all of that happens. And so I'll get off stage and people all the time, they'll go, man, that set was really tight. And I'll go, when you see my wife, hug her for me. And because what I'm telling them is that my set's so tight because I'm not home. I'm living on the road, and I think that makes a difference. And I don't think you have to do that your whole life. I'm not saying sell your soul. I'm saying that it's going to take some of that. It's going to take some living on stage,
Yeah.
and also, I give bit of advice, and I kind of just did before about writing, and I believe in it. Write about things that trigger you emotionally, happy, sad, mad, whatever it may be, because now you are 3 steps ahead in the writing process. Now you feel a certain way about it. Now you have an angle. Now you have a thought. Now you have something you're selling to the crowd. When you're upset about something, you have a side that you're on. I'm upset about it from this side. When we're comedians, we're constantly selling our thoughts, and we want them to be bought by the audience. Now whether they believe in them wholeheartedly or not, that doesn't matter. If you package it well enough, they'll receive it. So I think really going up and just talking about something that you really feel a certain way about, and then use your writing skills, hone it, craft it, mold it, make it make sense, work some things in. You're going to need tags. You're going to have to find a punchline. It's going to have a
Mhm.
flow, but you'll do so much by just going in your everyday life. Oh, this made me feel. However, write it down, not the whole thing, just the thought. And Nate Bargatze, I'm going to pass along some advice he gave me that I kind of already had, but he painted it in a better picture. When you first feel a certain way about something, don't investigate it. Don't go to Google and find out the correct answer. Say it how you feel it. Say it how it looks to you. That's very funny and it's a unique POV.
Mm.
So now you're speaking from and people in the crowd, they'll be laughing. They'll go, what the heck's he talking about? That, and you go, this is how I see this. And now you've got a unique perspective. Now it's going to be funnier. Now you're in your own voice. And Nate just talked about that on the road, and he's been opening up his sets with that little bit of advice. And if you look at Nate's work, that's how he does his comedy. Is kind of, yeah, there is a real answer to this, but let me tell you guys how I saw it through my big dumb eyes. And so that those type of things would be the advice. But to wrap that up, be you. Don't be anybody else. I've never tried to be another comedian on stage. I've never watched
Yeah.
a comedian and thought I'm going to do that type of. Bill Burr inspired me to do angry based comedy, but I never thought I'm going to get up there and I'm going to tell jokes like Bill Burr. So that's what I would pass along.
Your writing process. I'd love to know more about that because I know every comic has their own process for it. Do you take those concepts to the stage and just try them kind of from like piecing together in your mind? Do you write it all out first and then kind of take it to stage? Like even taking your crockpot bit, like how did that come to life? Did that come from how much of it was formulated before you took it to an audience, and how much of it was just like improved along the way? How did that come to be?
I love that question because the crock pot bit was a rare one where I just went on stage and I truly described what a crock pot was to me just in conversation. I just went up there and I go, man, this COVID thing's crazy, man. I've been running, I love crock pots and it's built for me. And I just kind of set it in conversational form. And then, eventually you build that bit and you put some shoulders on it and you get it going. But that one came from me just sharing what a crock pot was to me and how it blew my mind, how I could forget about it and absolutely nail it. In other ways, like sometimes, I don't feel like my rants online, they get a lot of love and the reels do well, but I don't think that people understand. If you love crowd work, a rant is a crowd. My rant's crowd work without the smoke screen. I have something happen to me that day, and I take it directly to stage. When I had a stain on my shirt, I got a stain on my shirt that day. I didn't go home and write anything down. I walked around all day upset with a stain on my shirt and how people were treating me. And then I went to the cellar and I told the audience how I felt with a stain on my shirt. And everybody goes, "Man, that's a great bit, yada, yada." No, I didn't know any of those words before they came out of my mouth. Not any of them. None
Yeah.
of them. The mice bit, probably the New York City mice bid, probably my favorite rant I've ever had. I promise you, right before that happened, Jared, I was on the phone with my agent, Sean, and I go, "I'm in here trying to kill these mice. I was losing my mind." He goes, "You haven't wrote a bit about it?" I go, there's no bit to write about these things. I just threw rat poison in the cabinet, and one of them used it as war paint, Sean. There's not a bit to be written. And he goes, "Man, I think you're there." And so I went to stage that night at the cellar and I told all those people about my mice problem, and none of that was written. None of that was, I wasn't in the Uber going, "Say it like this, say it like this." So those ranting bits, and I do that on purpose at the cellar.
Yeah.
And that's why, I'm going to try to get away from it a little bit. Every bit you see me screaming at the top of my lungs. And people sometimes come to shows and they think that's going to be an hour of that. I hate to break it to you. Nobody can do that. It's because I go to the cellar and like how people, mine for their crowd work. I'm getting up there and I'm taking this thought and I'm just going to try to ride some lightning. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's how I come up with some of those rants and such, is just off my off the top of my head in the moment.
I love the timeliness of that. And it reminds me of something we tell comics pretty frequently when they want to do even like a face to camera video. And I think like in our age of social media, again, I mean, I'm a social media, I run a digital brand company. So I'm very pro social media, but I feel like a lot of comics have tried to kind of jump around, scoot around this need for stage time just by feeding an online audience. And I love how you're able, because you're steeped in the comedy community where you can go up on stage that very night after something happens to you.
Hmm.
It's still real. You're not trying to replicate a feeling you had 4 days ago,
That's
but you're
right.
able to take and get some of your best, some of my favorite bits of yours the same day, because you're capturing that energy. And we tell them people all the time too, if you're doing a face to camera video, like don't, if you have something funny, when it's funny to you or when you're angry about it, like capture it right then and there, capture the raw emotion when you're doing, and it's on your phone. And it's the same. I feel like you have such an advantage being in a comedy town. There's a lot of great comedy cities now. I mean, you've got Austin, Nashville's a comedy scene. I mean, LA, obviously, and New York has
Yeah.
always been there.
Yeah.
Atlanta's
Chicago.
getting a little
Yeah.
bit better, I think. Chicago, there's a lot of them, but like I love that because you're on stage so much and working things out, you have the opportunity to capture that raw emotion that a lot of people would have to sit on maybe for days or weeks because they're not on the stage often enough.
That's not even something I've thought of. That's a great perspective. I am very lucky in that. And, I think, I didn't have this in Denver. So I've got some Denver comics. They go, "Stroop, these seller rants," they go, "I mean, I've always thought you were funny." They go, "This is insane." And I go, "Yeah." And I didn't really think about this. And you're correct, because I get up so often here. I'm taking these right to shop. I'm taking them right in. And,
Yeah.
and that's why it plays the way that it does. And so that, I mean, that is a huge advantage about, living in a city like New York. That's why I'm not going to live here forever. And it terrifies me because when you come here and you see how often these comics work, you're like, the rest of these people don't stand a chance. I mean, these guys are on stage
Yeah.
every night of their life, every night of their life. And I'm close to it, but I mean, I got to hang out with my family sometimes. But you think getting up once a week, I mean, that's tough. You can do those type of things. You see these guys like Nate and other guys, Henry Cho, they've been in comedy for 25 plus years, 30 years. They're kind of built in. They don't need this stage time
Yeah.
quite as much because their hours on stage are so high. Now they would probably take it if they could get it, but they don't need it. And I'm not quite there yet. I've been doing comedy 11, 12 years, nowhere close to 25 or 30. So, but when you're at this level, my level, and especially below that, stage time is it's so important.
Yeah, and it's reminds me of I draw this parallels as long as I've been training jiu-jitsu, that there's such a similarity between you got to get on the mats. There's no substitute for mat time. There's no substitute for the stage time. That's why, like, I mean, people who don't live in a comedy town where like you have a big club like a store or a cellar to see these showcases, you don't realize like these comics you spend. $150 on a ticket on to see in a theater, in an arena somewhere, they're working out in little clubs all the time. Like you look at any lineup on the Improv out there in LA, and it's crazy the lineups you'll see. You'll see Sebastian Maniscalco tucked in the middle right after Bill Burr before Whitney Cummings. And it's like, those are shows. If you collect every dollar for a ticket on any one of those guys' shows, it would be an astronomical price. But they're there working and grinding all the time, even people at the top, just to stay that sharp and to test the material all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, Nate does the same thing. I mean, going in and out of Zanies when he can, but I mean, he lives on the road. But yeah, it's even the biggest and the best. I mean, I see Dave Attell every time I'm at the Cellar. He's there every time. He's not ever there, and he's one of the best joke writers to ever walk this planet, and that's not by accident. Dave Chappelle. We have all these great conversations at the Cellar when you're hanging out, and somebody was just talking about how they were hanging out with Dave Chappelle for his birthday this year, and they were like, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" And he goes, "Man, all I really want to do is get up on stage." Dave Chappelle, who's been on stage more than anybody, lives on stage. All he does is comedy. All he wanted to do was to get on stage again. And that's not by accident. How good he is and these other comedians, it's not by accident. These reps, they matter so much, and I do believe in that.
Bringing it all home, you're taping your comedy special in what is it, less than a month. So October 3rd and 4th, Birmingham, Alabama, at the Lyric Theater. What does it mean to you to take that material, having spent time in Colorado building an audience there, in New York, but like, what does it mean to you to go back to Alabama to film this in front of your hometown?
It means everything. I say it everywhere I go. I said it on Dan Soder's podcast yesterday. Southern people are the funniest people I've ever met in my entire life. They word things uniquely. They phrase things uniquely. So to be back in the heart of Dixie doing this special, it couldn't feel any better. It really, because in some ways, I don't represent all Southern people, but I'd like to think a little bit I do. I'd like to think a little bit New York City, when they find out I'm from Alabama and they see that I'm a little smarter, a little quicker than they think. I hope it's a tip of the cap to my folks back home. So to come home and kind of celebrate it, because, the folks in Alabama and, Georgia and Mississippi, the surrounding areas, Tennessee, they see me out here more going around the world than with them. And they're always rooting me on. They're always sending me messages. They're always giving me encouraging words. And to come home and be like, "Hey, y'all, we're about to put this out for the world. And this is about us, for everyone, to enjoy our type of sense of humor, our way of life." And, I say I do Southern comedy. It's also just for country folks, people with this point of view in general, no matter where you're from. But it is something special. I mean, I got a good buddy of mine that's catering barbecue on that Saturday
That's
for
awesome.
us. And and I'm so excited about that. So when y'all come into the parking lot, there's going to be a giant smoker, that's going to be rolling smoke out there. But yeah, man, it means a lot. In Birmingham, just right in the middle of it all. Not a far drive from Atlanta, not a far ride from my hometown of Huntsville. It's a great location where we can all get together and have a good time. And I'm gonna have a lot of family, friends, fans, people I don't know, new fans, and it's gonna be special, man. And I've got an hour that we're all gonna be really proud of.
Can't wait for it. Derrick, thank you so much for joining us today. Follow Derrick Yells anywhere on social media. You can find him. He's probably going to bump into you in viral clips going out there everywhere if you don't find him first. But we'll see you in October. Cannot wait for it.
All right, man. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for hanging out.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you can get notified as soon as we drop a new episode. Let us know below. Who do you want to hear from? Who should we interview next? We want to know about that. We can go get them. And we'll see you next time.